So straight to business. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let's see. What do I want to talk to you about? I know what I want to talk to you about. How do I want to get to this? I need to figure out how we get to this, because this is an alarm bell that everyone should be concerned about. We have some great guests that you're going to love. And this is one of the reasons I think that maybe, not one of the reasons. Look, timing is crazy. Like I shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. And you never know what the Lord has in store for you, or the universe, however you want to categorize it or characterize it. Because this has been coming with the media since I got pushed out at CNN. This has been coming. This was what was behind the scenes that I tried to warn you about. Lots of people tried to warn about, but then, you guys didn't know. It takes years for these things to unfold. And you guys remember when I started doing this and I said, you're going to find out soon, like what happened, right? You're going to find out what happened. So there was a whole bunch of things that, that caused that, but this is where we are going. This is why Joy's not there. It's why Katie's not there. It's why Mehdi Hassan isn't there. It's why Jim Acosta is not there. It's why anyone who questions or pushes back, or who does not believe in ideology and who really believes in journalism, right? And that it's not supposed to be ideological. It is what it is. Those people are called liberal, or they're too biased and whatever, even though you're not. And then you have the folks who, look, I know it's the companies who are doing this, it's the bosses in the companies, but it's also the journalists. And by journalists, I mean not necessarily the people who sit there on the sets or doing the writing and all that, somewhat, but the people who run the news companies, the bosses of the news companies, the people who have been, sometimes they have now like these triumvirates, whatever, people who run networks. They allowed this to happen. And so in many ways, it's a crisis of their own making, because they did not stand up to these folks. They did not say, look, the newsroom is a whole different thing. I know you guys, you may not understand that because you are used to running a movie company or a streaming company or, a second-rate cable news company. And now you've made it to the big leagues and you don't know what you're doing. So we should keep the ideology out of this. If the folks who did that, and with that said, the folks who own those big media companies, if they had just stood up to Trump, they wouldn't be in this position as well. But then they might not be making as much money. So there you go. So tonight, I need you to really listen to me. I need you to hit the like and the thumbs up and call everybody and tell them to tune into this. You're going to like the show, okay? I'm going to tell you what's happening in the media. I'm going to tell you what is going on. So I really need you to listen tonight. Pay attention, hit that thumbs up, and get engaged. I want as many comments on the screen, producers, as possible. And another reason that you need to support independent media, okay? Because what's happening right now in America, in our media, in our politics, in our democracy, is not normal. It sure ain't subtle. It's not just the latest headline. It is the quiet, deliberate magnification of mainstream media. It is the magnification of the mainstream press. That is what's happening right now. I could end the broadcast right now, or in the stream right now, because that's what it is. I'm not talking about fringe networks or conspiracy podcasts. I'm talking about big institutions, the ones that we grew up trusting, the big three, the ones that told us that the truth. They told us the truth at one point. They exposed corruption. They held presidents accountable. Ask Richard Nixon, ask Bill Clinton, ask any of the presidents. Those same newsrooms are being hollowed out and re-engineered by people who serve power and not the public. And they're doing it right in front of us. They're playing in our faces. It's not even that. They're doing business in our faces. They don't care. This is the Orbanization. I'm talking about Viktor Orban. This is the Orbanization of American press, of the American press. The same playbook that Viktor Orban used to dismantle Hungary's free media. You don't need tanks for that. You just need control. Control of the regulators, control of the owners, control of who gets to buy what, control of who gets to say what, control of setting the narrative, the tone, and writing the first draft of history. Control of which ideology gets out there. Control of which religious persuasion gets out there and dogma. Trump doesn't need to shut the media down. He already owns their fear. He mocks them. He threatens them. He calls them enemies, and they flinch. There was a point where they didn't flinch, and people were like, enemy of the media, we're fighting back. It just went away. They got rid of all the people who were the bulwark between the corporation and the newsroom. So they flinch now. He doesn't need to silence journalists. He just makes them afraid to speak. And then the fear spreads. It seeps into the newsroom. It seeps into the editorial meeting. I'm telling you, I've been there. I have been there when the transition happened, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, am I on the editorial call for the network that I've been working at for all of these years? Or what is this? It was just like Fox News. Now, what the hell is going on here? The editorial meeting, the control room. You can hear it in the stories that don't get told, in the interviews that never air, and the way anchors start softening their tone, calling lies controversies, or, well, we need to hear the side, calling propaganda perspective. That's not journalism. That's surrender. And I know what you're probably thinking right now. Wait a second. Isn't this illegal? Didn't we used to have laws against this kind of thing? Didn't we have antitrust rules? We had FCC limits, something to stop one person or one company from owning everything. Remember all of that? Yeah, we did. And technically, we still do. But those guardrails have been stripped, gutted, hollowed out, ignored. Is over. The same people who were supposed to enforce them got cozy with the very power they were meant to regulate. Remember, journalism, the media is supposed to hold the powerful accountable. Now the powerful is dog walking the media. Now that the fox isn't just guarding the hen house, it is the foxification of the whole farm. Donald Trump owns the deed, or the owners of these companies, they own the deed. They own the cameras and the broadcast rights. The government, state-run media, and the networks, the boards, the billionaires running them. Remember, this is all about, I have an obligation to the board. The board has a certain ideology. They don't like a certain ideology. If it's too liberal, they're not giving Donald Trump a chance. They don't let MAGA people talk. They don't let them get away with the lies. This is the ideology of the billionaires who are running these companies. Green for the most part, but they're mainly conservative. They're not aligning out they're aligning out of a certain ideology. But they are surrendering and aligning out of fear of losing access, right? They want to cozy up with the White House. They want to go to the big state dinners. Remember they're donating money to the big ballroom. Comcast is donating tens of millions of dollars that we know of. So is, I believe, Google and Apple, and I think they all fear of losing profit, fear of getting the next angry tweet from Donald Trump. But when the press becomes a partner to power instead of a check on it, democracy becomes a performance. The First Amendment, that turns into it's just a prop, just something that we just talk about, but we don't actually exercise. Journalism turns into a game show with talking points instead of truth. You heard me? You feel me? Do you ever feel like you're watching a game show or a reality show when you're watching the news and you're like, what am I doing here? So let's be real. This isn't about politics. This is about power. When you control what people hear, you control what they believe. And when you control what they believe, you control what they will accept. That's why this moment really matters so much. The media isn't just a business. It's supposed to be a public trust. It's supposed to be the backbone of democracy. It's supposed to be the oxygen of truth. And when you choke that off, you turn news into entertainment. When you trade courage for access, you're not informing the public. You're training them to stop asking questions. That's what's happening. And I got to tell you, the folks who are running these news organizations or running these companies, I should say, they know exactly what they're doing. They think if they play nice, then they're going to survive. That's not how it works with a bully, not a dictator, not an authoritarian. But history doesn't reward cowardice. It remembers it. The press is supposed to be fearless. So that's why I blame some of the very news organizations who are now complaining about what's happening. It's and I'm sure they're sitting there, well, what happened? Whatever. What do we do? This is a crisis, I believe, of their own making. They helped. The media, the journalism is supposed to shine a light in dark corners, not rent out the bulb to the highest bidder. Yet here we are, with executives reshaping coverage to flatter a man who openly despises the very idea of a free press. You know how the Washington Post says democracy dies in darkness? This is how democracy dies. Not overnight, not with one big crash. It dies headline by headline, firing by firing. Companies do it because they compromise by compromise. And I hate to say it, but right now, that death is underway. So what do? We fight back the only way we can. We support the truth tellers. I'm going to have them on tonight. One of them is in the waiting room right now. The reporters who still risk their jobs to tell what's real, who hold these networks accountable. We stop rewarding cowardice with clicks. You do what you did with Jimmy Kimmel. You take your money back. You cancel your subscription. You cut the cord. We stop confusing access for integrity, because if we don't stand up for the truth right now, there won't be any truth left to stand on later. And look, make no mistake about it. This isn't a warning for the future. This is right now. This is here. It is happening right now. This is America. The press is supposed to protect the people. And tonight, it's the people who have to protect the press. Ain't that some shit? Because if we lose that, if we lose the truth, we lose everything. Just like people are losing a lot right now with a government shutdown. They don't know where their health care is going to come from. Open enrollment happens soon. Medicare open enrollment is happening right now, and people don't know that there are changes afoot. The government is shut down, and even our lawmakers are not helping. Watch. I want to talk to you about something that really matters, especially if you are 64 years old or older. It's Medicare annual enrollment season, and this is a time to pay attention, everyone. I just went through it with my mom, and perhaps you have been there too, sitting at the kitchen table, buried in paperwork, trying to make sense of it all. Plans have changed. Some were even canceled. And get this, according to the Wall Street Journal, if you're not careful, you could end up paying more, even lose coverage for your doctor, for the doctor that you trust. So pay attention. That's why I am telling you about Chapter. Chapter is the Don Lemon Show Network's new health partner. They review every plan nationwide to find out what's best for you, not what makes them money. Their help is 100% free. It takes about 20 minutes, and on average, people save around $1,100 a year. So don't wait. Call Chapter at 212-931-0855 before December 7th and make sure you and your family are protected. So let's discuss now. I want to bring in someone who is holding truth to power, someone who is in this new digital world, and that's Max Tani. He's the media editor at Semaphore. In a moment, LZ Granderson, who's opinion columnist for the Los Angeles Times, will join us. And then more folks after the break. Charles Coleman, Wajahat Ali, Jack Cocciarella, all will be here momentarily. Max, thanks for joining. Max, I got to ask you, what the hell is going on?
You know, it's really interesting. I heard some of what you were saying before, Don, and thanks for having me on the show. I think it's what happened is what you mentioned in the report, which is that CNN chief Mark Thompson visited the White House last week, ostensibly to talk to them about this new CNN streaming product that they have, left that meeting, and then the next morning said on a call that he thought that the CNN should ease up on its coverage about the demolition of the East Wing of the White House. Now, CNN is very upset about the characterization of this as the two things being linked. They are not talking specifically about what happened in the meeting, but they are very, very much pushing back and saying that Mark, essentially was trying to was just making a comment on a general editorial based on his editorial views. But regardless of what you think about their explanation for this, the timing certainly was bad. And the optics were certainly bad that he would make that editorial suggestion just the day after going to a private meeting at the White House, with which they're not disclosing the details about what it was focused on.
I mean, people make editorial decisions for many reasons. I'm wondering if he said it because, which is also problematic, just as problematic, because maybe it's, it's not salacious enough that it gets the ratings. It's not, isn't enough conflict in it for people. Maybe people don't understand it, or it just doesn't, maybe it's the way they're presenting it. I don't know. But it's not terribly unusual for network heads to meet with the president. But this one, as you say, the timing is a bit suspect here. CNN has been trying to move to the right for years, as I know, and it's no secret because John Malone said it, David Zaslav said it, they all said it, Chris Licht said it, and now Mark Thompson is saying this. So then what are viewers and what are Americans to take away from this?
I think it's really it's hard to see this in another way if they're not necessarily going to explain it or talk at all about what was said in the meeting. I mean, I find the idea that it doesn't rate well to be very curious. I think the images have been somewhat damaging. I mean, Trump himself, in a report in the Wall Street Journal, they said that Trump didn't like the images of the White House, and this has been a really big story that a lot of other news organizations have seen high traffic and ratings on. So I do struggle with the idea that I didn't think that this was an interesting story. I think that people at CNN seem to think that the leadership at CNN seems to suggest that there's other big stories going on competing with this. Maybe that's what Mark was trying to get at. But I think the reality is that all of these organizations, for the reasons that you're talking about, many of these organizations are under a lot of scrutiny because they have tried to tack back towards the center or the right in some instances. We have the recent moves with CBS is another one, the Washington Post deciding to not endorse Kamala Harris and get rid of a lot of its existing editorial board and leadership. So these networks are under a lot of scrutiny from both sides. They shouldn't, my personal view is that they shouldn't just be thinking about, scrutiny from Trump and the White House and these folks, which I think is a big concern given these larger corporate concerns that the bosses are afraid of. But they should also, of course, be scared of backlash from many of their viewers, and many legacy organizations like CNN have a lot of viewers that are obviously of a different political ideology and persuasion.
Well, I mean, Max, this has never worked. I mean, it's any news organization that tries to do it, and if you're just, sort of cosplaying, right, it doesn't work because there's Fox News. And people who watch Fox News, I mean, honestly, they're never going to turn on MSNBC. People who watch Fox News are never really going to watch CNN. It's just that it's been tried. I was in cable for nearly 20 years, and it just did not. It doesn't work that way. And I think because the people who are looking for the conservative bent on the news are not necessarily looking for information. They're looking to have their ideas and their ideology reinforced. And that's what Fox News does. That's what Newsmax does. That's what OAN, if that's still on the air, that's what they do.
Yeah, OAN is still out there for what it's worth. Though.
It is. Okay. I wasn't sure. Didn't they get knocked off or something at one point?
There's some carriage disputes, but actually Trump has been, I believe the Trump administration was also helpful with them on that score.
Yeah. Yeah, let's bring in LZ Granderson, an opinion columnist for the Los Angeles Times. LZ, good evening to you. I'm not sure if you heard my opening, but I'll ask you the same question I asked Max Tani. Welcome. Thank you, sir, for doing this. What is going on here?
Business as usual, in some regards. I know it feels as if this is worse than it's ever been, but throughout the history of this country, government has always been sort of at media, at free speech. This, Don, I teach at my school. It's one of the first lectures I give. The very first newspaper on this land lasted one day. Public occurrences. Why did it close? Because the government shut it down. I mean, that's always been. And so this is a cycle in a lot of ways. What makes it scarier is the empirical power of wealth. In this context, we haven't seen this kind of accumulation of wealth in quite some time. But again, if you go back to when I just talked about public occurrences, that wealth was accumulated at that time in the colonial powers of England and other nations. And so we've seen free speech be challenged like this in many different fashions across mankind. And this is the latest iteration of that.
Yeah. Since we are here and you mentioned that about, because I characterize this as a consolidation of conservative media. And perhaps you're right, it's business as usual, but it appears this was usually done behind the scenes, right? And it wasn't so overt and obvious. But also, I mean, I do take issue a little bit, LZ, because there was a time when people who ran the news organizations would push back against the corporation. Either one of you can jump in here. But that's not happening now. Basically,
Are you counting this corporation of industrialized slavery? Because if you count that one, the newspapers did not push back on that. In fact, the newspapers have encouraged that for quite some time. Shout out to you, Ben Franklin. So I would say again, in some capacity, this is business as usual.
Yes, I'm talking about, I get what you're saying, but I'm talking about modern day. There was a time when, I'll just be honest, when I was at CNN and we would hear, well, AT&T or whatever, they want, or Warner, they want CNN to move to the right. And the boss would say, you let me worry about that. Just tell the truth on the air and get it right. We're not moving in one ideological direction or the other. I'm talking about in modern times. That doesn't happen anymore. Now they're installing all the conservatives and they're bragging about it and doing it in broad daylight.
I think it basically, Don, I think that this.
Uh-oh, did we lose Max?
Oh, did we lose?
Yeah, I think Max lost connectivity. Max, come back to us.
Yeah, are you there?
We're here now. Yeah, got it.
I think that I was just saying that I think that this gets at really the weakness of a lot of these legacy news organizations. I mean, I think that if these organizations still had massive viewership and ratings numbers and large engaged audiences, I think that, and made a lot more money for the media companies going forward, I think that they would have more of a backbone. I think the fact is that these large media corporations see these channels and these networks as a small and shrinking part of their business. They see the audiences declining. And so I think that they are valuing them less. And so they're more willing to push to adhere to the Trump administration's lines in order to get other larger regulatory business done. And the people who are being installed to lead these organizations are not the people who are doing kind of trailblazing, media innovation, right, for the next generation. They're really trying to shepherd these news organizations through a period of decline. And so I think those two things are cohering to make these news organizations have a lot less, a backbone at the high up leadership level. Do you think that that's true, Don? I mean, you were in one of these organizations during the part of this.
Do I think it's true? I do think it's true. But we had old school, hard knock, real journalists running the joint, and it wasn't just someone who was, a corporate lackey. I'm not saying anybody's, I'm just saying that there were people who believed in journalism, who were running these organizations and people who stood up to the media bosses, the owners, the corporation. They would say, stay out of the editorial. This is when I leave. I have a very good friend who ran Warner. And he said someone approached him with a conversation about such and such. And he said, and if you were talking directly about one of my people, this is when I would get up and leave the room. Nobody's doing that anymore. And I think that this is a crisis in many ways of their own making. If the people, and I hate to blame the journalists because they're in, and especially the folks that I worked with at CNN, the best in the business, it's tough for them. However, the people who run CNN and other organizations, some of the journalists who are there, if they had just stood up a little bit more and weren't so afraid, I think that they would be in a different position now. And even the owners of these companies, if they had stood up to Donald Trump and said, this is not how it works, but they want to make money. They don't want their business, their mergers and acquisitions not to go through with the FCC. LZ?
And I think there is a need for journalists, like to make sure that as we're talking about this moment in time, that we don't conflate media with journalism.
Right.
Sometimes we use it interchangeably, and I know that the public generally does, which is partly one of the reasons why we're in this situation. I think if the general public understood that while journalism is a part of corporate America, its purpose isn't linked to corporate America. Its purpose is actually linked to the Constitution. And, we've got that kind of lost in the sauce in a lot of ways. I think opinionated journalism has helped do that. I think the disastrous decision to get rid of the Fairness Act in the 1980s had a lot to do with that, allowing Rupert Murdoch to acquire as much as he did, which was against the law at the time in the 1980s. With telecommunications director under Reagan, made some finagling moves to help the brother out. When we start looking at all the different incremental steps that kind of was taken to dismantle what you're talking about, Don, at the end of the day, is just all about, to your point, money. And so if we allow journalism to be linked to money, yes, we're going to be in trouble. We have to get the American people to remember journalism isn't about money. It's not attached to media. It's not media. The purpose of journalism is to help keep the government in check. And we need to get some, conjunction junction, where shall function back on television so that's back a part of the education experience so people understand that.
What I wanted to, that was my question. I was going to ask you guys, am I naive by thinking that the journalistic part of the company should not be one of the profit centers that they rely on so much? When
I was coming up, Don, back in the day, when you went to college to be
during the horse and buggy period.
Listen, when I went to college to be a newspaper reporter specifically, I remember we were on distinctly different floors in the building. And I think we were separated by 2 floors. And when I say they, I mean the business center, the business section where advertising was located. And so there were physical barriers between editorial and the business section, because to your point, in those days, we were serious about keeping corporate America's hands out of journalism business. But after 9/11 and the economy sort of shrank after the housing boom, those walls sort of started to crumble. And what we're seeing now is the acceleration of that crumbling.
Max, I got to ask you about this because they're getting rid of people and then installing, as I mentioned earlier, conservatives. They've got Barry Weiss, who's at CBS now. And then if Ellison does, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to show the audience something about Ellison later. If Ellison does get control of, he's trying to buy CNN or trying to buy Warner Brothers, which owns CNN. So he'll have CBS and CNN, and then he'll also have a part of TikTok. He'll control the algorithm. And now, Max, your tweet that really got our attention this morning is when you tweeted out about this chatter that Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, could be CNN and NBC's editorial chief.
Yeah, this was a suggestion from Rich Greenfield, who is a very prominent media analyst at Lightshed Partners. I wouldn't tweet out this normally, but Rich is very influential and people take him very seriously. And he was writing about his suggestion that Comcast make a serious bid to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery, and he said as part of that, he suggested that that Comcast should say to the Trump administration or to regulators that it's going to appoint Erica Kirk, who is Charlie Kirk's widow and is currently the CEO of Turning Points USA, his organization, to be the editor-in-chief overseeing NBC News and CNN, and presumably, have some sort of a stake in, some sort of a say in what happens in Versant, at least according to Rich. I mean, I think the reaction to this has pretty much been universally either people laughing about it or people thinking that it's a pretty crazy idea. And I do even want to distinguish this from Barry Weiss. You could make the argument that Barry, obviously approaching these things from the right, ideological, no experience in television news before this. We've never seen an appointment like hers to a job like that. But at the very least, I mean, she's worked at the Wall Street Journal. She's worked at the New York Times. She's worked inside of news organizations. Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Turning Points USA. This is an expressly ideological organization dedicated to creating and furthering the conservative movement among young people. This isn't even just like this wouldn't even be like putting Sean Hannity in charge, right? This is a conservative political activist, right? It's a pretty crazy suggestion by a very serious analyst who a lot of people listen to in that space.
Was he just being facetious and saying this has gotten so ridiculous that maybe they should do that, and that's the only way they're going to get it and see how fucked up the?
I don't think so, because I think that this is a really serious suggestion that Rich believes. I mean, he really thinks that they should make a run at it. And he said that one of the only real primary concern is getting through this regulation. And as part of that, they would need, Brian Roberts and Comcast would need to make some concessions to Trump and to the FCC. I mean, it's a pretty stark and striking world that we're living in if that is what needs to happen. But clearly we've seen some evidence that that is the case. But even the suggestion that they would want to put Erica Kirk in charge, it's somewhat unimaginable.
While all this is happening, LZ, a lot of Black and brown voices are being silenced in the media. Faces are disappearing as well. Writers, disappearing.
Yeah,
LZ.
This is what we knew and understood what was going to happen if last November transpired the way that last November did. I don't think that after, then candidate Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists National Conference, I don't think after that appearance, anyone left that thinking that he was going to be a friend to professional media, to professional journalists. And so it's just sort of a continuation of that. And unfortunately, the corporate aspect of it, the money aspect of it, has the people thinking the math means let's get rid of these voices, let's minimize these people. And, it's short-sighted for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, more than 25 million people did vote for, someone else. That voice can still be monetized, and those pockets don't disappear, so I don't understand, just automatically sort of like the switch off in that thinking, in that calculus in terms of how to make your media company, soluble going further. But, from an ideological perspective, it's really fucked up, and it's fucked up in the sense that not that they being those in control of the media companies agree with anything that the administration is saying, is that if they do disagree, they won't feel comfortable or powerful enough to say it. Mm-hmm. And that by its definition is an authoritarian relationship with your government. And the fact that they are willing to make this exchange for money, given the amount of money they've already acquired, keep in mind, we're not saying, we're making a leap for being 100,000-aires to millionaires. They're in a stratosphere in which, their grandchildren won't be able to spend the wealth. And yet
their grandchildren. Right.
And yet they're still motivated, right, to make these sort of concessions. And, to your point, in the yesteryear, the Rockefellers and et cetera, that layer of wealth, still protected the republic, to a certain degree. And it doesn't seem as if the republic matters. This is a truly global sort of perspective. If you're coming at it from a global perspective, then you aren't, bothered by things like, domestic issues like the Constitution.
LZ Granderson, Max Tani, did you guys get anything? Is there anything I left out? Anything you want to say?
There is something I want to say, which is that I really do think that a part of this is this is really concentrated in television news right now because of the exposure from these corporate bosses who really want to do these mergers and acquisitions to kind of compete with the Netflixes and the Amazons of the world. I think there's a lot of really great journalism being done by journalists at particularly companies that are not exposed to this type of stuff. I mean, I think the New York Times has done a lot of great work. I think that the Washington Post, for all of the faults that, for all of its concessions that it's made to Trump, there's great stories in there every day, peeling back the layers on things. There's a lot of great independent journalists out there on YouTube and on Substack that are doing really great work. And so I do think yes, exactly. Yeah, maybe on shows like these, but I think that but I really do think that, I think that gives me a lot of hope. I think for these television news networks, I have a little bit less in terms of their independence.
Well, I learned from Max and I learned from LZ. I read both of you. Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say, go Dodgers. I want some joy. I want some joy, Don. I'm not leaving here all sad about democracy going bye-bye. Go Dodgers.
Thank you, LZ. Your sports roots are coming back.
I need my roots to do something.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Support today comes from Henson Shaving. Now, I've tried just about every razor under the sun: electric, disposable, subscription, and they all promise a smooth shave. But smooth doesn't always mean gentle. That's what I love about Henson. Their razor is made in an aerospace machine shop, the same place that made parts for a Mars rover in the International Space Station. Now, you can feel that precision the second it touches your skin. The blade barely extends past the razor surface, less than the width of a human hair. And there's no irritation. There's no razor burn. There's no plastic waste. Just a clean, skin-friendly shave that feels like confidence, not punishment, okay? And once you've got your Henson razor, replacement blades cost just a few bucks a year. No subscriptions, no gimmicks. So head over to hensonshaving.com/lemon and use the code LEMON for a free pack of 100 blades with your razor. Enough for 2 years of shaving. That's HENSON shaving.com/lemon. Support for the show today comes from MSI Reproductive Choices. In sub-Saharan Africa, millions of teenage girls drop out of school every year because they get pregnant. Not because they want to, but because they don't have access to birth control. MSI is changing that. They go where no one else goes, giving girls contraception, safety, and control over their futures. For just $26, you can give one girl birth control for 4 months, for 4 years, That's 4 years to finish school, to dream, to live her life. They're one of the top-rated nonprofits on Charity Navigator and Candid, and I've seen their impact firsthand. This is real, life-saving work. So here's what you should do. Text LEMON, LEMON, to 511-511, or you can visit msiunitedstates.org. That's M as in modern, S as in safe, I as in informed. How many girls will you help? How many? Text LEMON to 511-511 today. Message and data rates may apply. And thank you to our sponsors. So we heard from the reporters. Now let's hear from the thought leaders. Charles Coleman is here as an MSNBC legal analyst and former prosecutor and a civil rights attorney. Wajahat Ali is here, political commentator, the host of Democracy-ish podcast, and the author of The Left Hook Substack. And every time I go on, he gets me in trouble, but I love it. It's good trouble. Jack Cocciarella is here. He's the host of the Jack Cocciarella Show on YouTube and a brand new contributor to The Bulwark. Congratulations. Welcome. Before we get started, I just want to play something about the consolidation of conservative media. And this one is specifically about the Ellisons, but that will get us into the conversation. Roll it.
I wanted to tell you about something wild happening in plain sight. The second richest man on earth, a very pro-Israel Republican, and his son are on the brink of taking over a huge chunk of the media landscape, including TikTok, all at once. Meet Larry Ellison, the second richest man in the world. At a 2014 fundraiser packed with pro-Israel billionaires, Ellison said there is no greater honor than supporting the Israeli military. In 2017, he donated over $16 million to Friends of the IDF, the largest gift they had ever received. Larry also has a relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been a guest at Ellison's private island. Now, Larry's company, Oracle, is set to be part of the ownership group that will take over TikTok in a deal Donald Trump just announced. Oracle will oversee TikTok's algorithm. All the while, Larry's son, David Ellison, recently merged his company, Skydance Media, with Paramount Global, which means the Ellison father and son duo now control CBS News, Paramount Plus, and major Hollywood studios, and could be on their way to overseeing TikTok. David, the son, is also reportedly acquiring this online magazine called The Free Press, an outlet known for being very pro-Israel and founded by a woman named Bari Weiss. Under the deal, Bari Weiss is reportedly set to become editor-in-chief of CBS News. Here's why this matters. The Free Press, again, is very pro-Israel, to the point that they recently published a story that seeks to discount the starvation conditions happening in Gaza. The story argued that since some of the kids who have died of starvation might have had other diseases or injuries, that undermines the idea that Israel is mass starving Palestinians. Netanyahu himself, again an internationally accused war criminal, tweeted about the story approvingly. Sources inside CBS have told me that they would never get away with the kinds of editorial standards and norms that Bari Weiss and the Free Press maintain. And yet Bari Weiss is now possibly going to lead coverage at CBS. And it doesn't even stop there. Larry Ellison, the dad, is reportedly also eyeing acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns CNN, HBO, DC Studios, and of course Warner Brothers Studios. If that goes through, the Ellisons would control two of America's biggest cable news networks in CNN and CBS, major streaming platforms in HBO and Paramount Plus, massive Hollywood studios, a media outlet that's earned the approval of Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course, TikTok. This is not just about owning media companies. It's about controlling the narrative pipeline, the stories, images, and info that you consume every day. This isn't happening in secret. A media empire is being built that could decide what you get to see and what you don't.
So there you go. And you guys are watching intently. Wajahad, I saw you watching and nodding your head, and so Charles. Jack has got a poker face, but he doesn't look very happy. I'll start with you, Wajahad. What do you say? What is going on? The same thing that I started with the reporters. What the hell is happening here? You're muted. Wajahad, you're muted. You'll go out and come back. Okay, go ahead, Charles.
I think your last guests, when I tuned in, Don, were really hitting the nail on the head. I think that there is the coalescence of a number of different factors, some of them corporate, some of them ideological, and some of them political. And I think that a lot of people sort of have looked at this moment and focused squarely on the political because that's something that we're familiar with and we've been talking about. But for people who are not necessarily familiar with the industry, they will probably miss the serious implications of how business has played into this, regardless of political ideology or affiliation. So in short, the way that I sort of try to explain this when I have conversations with folks is that cable news, for example, is dying. And it's dying a very fast death from a business model perspective because of streaming and because of what streaming is doing. And the fact is that linear television, which is what we refer to it as, is not able to sustain itself in the ways that it has previously from a business standpoint. Mm-hmm. What then happening is that that's causing a number of different entities to try and merge, to acquire other entities, to eliminate, competition as much as they can in order to survive in this very changing industry because of the technology and the business. Well, the thing about that, if it had not already been explained to your viewers, is that ultimately all of these mergers, all these acquisitions, all of these moves on the business end, they have to be approved. And they have to be approved by the FCC, which is a government entity which it basically regulates communication platforms, legacy platforms across the country. Well, it's a government entity, which means that it's headed by someone who is a presidential appointee. And this is where the politics and ideology come into play a little bit more, in as much as if the executive branch wants to, and we've seen the executive branch do certain things during this administration and the previous administration of this same president that are unusual, they can bear down and put their thumb on the scale as to how these deals do or do not take place. So go back to now the board members of these various media entities, regardless of their ideology, regardless of where they sit on the scale politically, their first interest is their shares and the shares of their shareholders. So they want to see whatever deals they're trying to make go through. And that means that the instructions become pretty much across the media landscape: do not do or say anything that is going to rock the boat to a degree that means that our sales and my shares and the shares of these shareholders are going to be compromised. And so it's not just political, it's not just ideological. There is a serious business corporate component that is influencing everything that we're seeing that a lot of people aren't getting. So you have to consider all of these factors and how these elements come together. So to answer the question, what's going on? That's what's going on, that a lot of people may not really understand how we're seeing what we're seeing.
Wajat, can we hear you? You good?
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I can hear you. I got you.
All right,
So having said, Charles, having said that, by the way, people said your cat is the one that muted you. So
yeah, that's Billu wanted to chime in because Billu was very, very disturbed by the oligarchy taking over the media, and it's state-run media. And if you've seen the movie There Will Be Blood, there's that great scene in the end where Daniel Day-Lewis explains capitalism, and he goes, "I drink your milkshake." And this is the oligarchy drinking up all of our milkshake. It's media consolidation by the world's worst people. And I'm so glad you ran that Zeteo piece, because what's happening behind the scenes, folks? One of the richest people on and off again, Larry Ellison, who has the world's worst politics, and his Nepo baby son are now gobbling up the media empire, right? They've taken CBS. They want to get Warner Brothers, Discovery. They already have TikTok. That'll give them control of CNN. And they're laying the red carpet for an authoritarian regime. Donald Trump. We already saw Brendan Carr, the FCC chair of Donald Trump, go on right-wing hack Benny Johnson's podcast and openly threaten ABC and also Sinclair and NextGen. Hey, you better get rid of Jimmy Kimmel, who's a critic, or else. And what did ABC do, Don? Got rid of Kimmel. Now you're seeing David Ellison, who has terrible right-wing pro-Israel politics. I mean, beyond horrific, where they're supporting this genocide. He brought in one of the greatest whitewashers of this genocide, Barry Weiss of Free Press. Free Press was bought for $150 million. Folks, Don gets more views on his videos than the Free Press. So Don, you should sell Don Lemon Show for $200 million. Barry Weiss comes in, fails up in life, complete inexperience, takes over CBS, where she's bringing in other lackeys who go against the woke, go against people of color, are subordinate to the oligarchy's agenda. One of the main advisors to Barry Weiss is David Sachs. David Sachs is another South African billionaire, part of the PayPal oligarchy, buddies with, wait for it, Elon Musk, who's taken over Twitter, and Peter Thiel, who is running Palantir, the one-stop surveillance shop. David Sachs is also the head of Trump's if you will, AI policy. So now you have the consolidation of CBS under Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is also now bringing in the Free Press's Olivia Reingold, just a complete hack of a reporter who did a pro-genocide kind of whitewashing of the starvation of Palestinian kids piece. She's coming in through Washington Post as an opinion editor. And then you have the consolidation of Bezos with Washington Post, Elon Musk Twitter, Zuckerberg Facebook. You got the consolidation, the gobbling up of TikTok by Ellison. Ellison's Nepo baby son, David Ellison, now has Paramount. He has CBS. And Ellison is making a pitch for, as you all heard, CNN and HBO. So now you're going to see the world's worst people. It's like a Bond supervillain plot, Don. And where the Bond supervillain at the end of the third act tells the world, "This is my plot, James Bond, to consolidate all media and make it state-run to be subservient to the agenda of the oligarchy and to the people who support Donald Trump, who are against the DEI, which is all of us here, and against the woke agenda." And you're seeing it happen in real time. I'm so glad you brought that up. Mark Thompson now, CNN folks, big news that came out yesterday. He goes to Washington, D.C., meets with Donald Trump, and then says, hey, you know what? Let's not do any more coverage on Donald Trump taking $300 million bribes from billionaires to destroy the East Wing of the White House and create a ballroom. I don't think people want to hear that. And also, news came out today that Barry Weiss, who now runs CBS, essentially CBS News, is trying to poach Scott Jennings from CNN for a plum job.
That actually, by the way, just so you know, I had to say this because I'm a James Bond fan. That actually is the plot of a James Bond movie, right? Like a
Tomorrow
villain.
Never Dies.
Yes, Tomorrow Never Dies. Like the thank you. The villain gets control of the media and then gets to say whatever, right? So it doesn't sound like the plot of a James Bond movie. It is the plot of a James Bond.
That was also a great Daniel Day-Lewis. I gotta say, that was a great Eli. I drink it up. It's impressive.
Jack, I want to know what you think of all this. I have so many elements that I can play, and I'm talking about people they are purging. One of them is John Dickerson, right? Who is, and we don't know for what reason, but they're getting rid of John Dickerson, who people I think really love over at CBS and does a really, I think, a good job. And others that they are purging and have purged. I mean, hey. But so what's your take on all this?
Well, Don, you just said it. Like, there are so many elements, and if you're an elected Democrat and you're kind of finally, dipping your toe into the conspiracy but not conspiracy water when it comes to talking about the Epstein files, you should love the opportunity to talk about Larry Ellison. He's at the nexus of things that not only Democratic voters hate, but just like voters in general. You're talking about someone who has helped support financially a genocide by the Netanyahu regime at the same time as he's running cover for them when he's going to be buying TikTok. And you literally saw Netanyahu said that this is our weapon of war. So most people are furious with the genocide that we have seen take place before our very eyes. Larry Ellison, full endorsement. At the same time, no one really stands to benefit more than him as an individual in the AI race, as he just, got his $300 billion deal with OpenAI to do cloud infrastructure for them. And you saw Bernie Sanders today posting these really disturbing billboards of like, get rid of all of your human employees. AI is the future. I don't think anyone really wants these slot machines running our world where we continue to have to do jobs in which people aren't paid living wages, but like these giant data centers are eating up all of the water and the energy, exploding your electric bills to 100%. So Larry Ellison is there, as Oracle is the biggest data and cloud storage company. And by the way, if you want to talk about that as well as a Democrat, it started after Larry Ellison left the CIA working for a project called Oracle. And now he also stands to benefit out of this explosion of surveillance technology. So of all of the billionaires, and there are so many for Democrats to hate, I don't know why you wouldn't focus on the guy who loves Israel, AI, and surveillance tech and say, let's make this guy the face of the Trump oligarchy connection to everything that we hate, and just hit on this constantly. And at the same time as you also, and this kind of media conglomerate of everything coming together on the right. And they've always owned everything. Like, let's be clear about this. This was never a liberal media apparatus that we saw when the biggest podcast were Joe Rogan and Candace Owens. Fox is the biggest network, so on and such. Zuckerberg was always going to be catering to the right in some way. But you see these media executives and these billionaires and these guys on Wall Street, if they can be bullied by Trump so easily, I don't know why the next Democratic president or Congress wouldn't come in and say, we know these guys fold so easily under just the smallest amount of pressure. Like, enough with the carrots, let's get the sticks out. It has never worked to try to encourage billionaires to do the right thing. If Donald Trump can get them to so easily fold, we should be employing the same tactics to actually make people's lives better. But I think Larry Ellison should be the topic of conversation in so many ways for so many Democrats.
I think there's a important piece here that ideologically, I talked about the different sort of buckets, like the ideological bucket, the business bucket, and the political bucket, that we don't necessarily talk a lot about. A lot of people have said that the tone and tenor of where we are in our political discourse is essentially a pendulum correction of what we experienced during the Obama years. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's not my sort of lead talking point on that. What I will say, however, is that from an ideological standpoint, when you talk about the magnification of media, I tend to believe that the thought is correct that, this has always been something that has been owned and pushed by conservatives, generally speaking. But what we are seeing is a bit of backlash that legacy media has to have some level of responsibility, or take some level of responsibility from an ideological space, because the majority of Americans do not have a college degree. That is a fact. That is not something that's like, up for debate. And I think that for a period, there was a feeling like too much from legacy media, too much coming from that space was either lambasting or down talking or sort of ostracizing folks who weren't, bi-coastal, highly educated folks from an ideological standpoint, from a ivory tower of disconnection, in a way that did not validate their feelings about the way that they lived and experienced and processed life. If you want to call that white fragility, fine. But what I'm saying is that I think that for a number of years, there was a sentiment that there was some down talking to the majority of Americans that was coming from either centrist or leftist media that made people feel like it was not okay for them to be themselves. And this period of correction, ideologically speaking, I think comes out of that, in the same way that people have talked about the political pendulum swinging in the opposite direction. People who were mad about Obama.
I've got a lot to say about that. If you guys, can you just please give me, I need 2 minutes because I want to respond to that. Having been in the media for all of this, 2 minutes, word from our sponsors, watch. Support comes from Ollie. If you've seen my dogs, their family, they run the house, and like any family member, they deserve the best. That's why I switched to Ollie. Ollie makes fresh human-grade dog food, real beef, chicken, turkey, lamb, all cooked slow and delivered right to your door. My dogs went from sniffing to tail wagging in seconds, and honestly, their coats have never looked better. Energy is great too. Ollie's team of vet nutritionists designs every meal to match your dog's needs. Just take their quick 30-second quiz, and they're going to create a plan that's as unique as your pup. So go to ollie.com/lemon and use the code LEMON to get 60% off of your first box. And if your dog doesn't love it, they're going to give you your money back. That's OLLIE.com/lemon, code LEMON for 60% off. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I've had therapy sessions that changed my life. A few words, a small breakthrough, a safe space to just breathe. Those moments really matter. BetterHelp has helped more than 5 million people find that same space, connecting you with licensed therapists online from wherever you are. You fill out a quick questionnaire. They match you with someone who fits your needs. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch, and you can do it at any time. So sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is ask for help, and BetterHelp makes that easier. So if you have been thinking about it, this is your sign. Visit betterhelp.com/DonLemon to get 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/DonLemon, because taking care of your mind is taking care of your life. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Back to the program. So Charles, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but and so you tell me, maybe I'm wrong about what you're saying. I think I don't necessarily agree with all of that, because I was there when it was happening. I saw the resentment from the right for Barack Obama. I saw the resentment from white people for Barack Obama, from the racists, from all of that. And so at some point, the folks who said that they did not have, they felt that they were being spoken down to, they thought that educating people and telling people the truth was somehow speaking down to them, and criticizing people for believing in conspiracy theories. Like what was the big conspiracy theory thing? What was the name of that group? You know what I'm talking about? QAnon.
Yeah.
For believing in conspiracy theories. And now the QAnon folks are running the government. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure if that is, you've got now she's all of a sudden a Democrat, but you have the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world who would spout off QAnon falsities all the time. Donald Trump would spout them off. And so they believe that just by telling the truth, that somehow you were speaking down to them. Now, did it happen in some?
Yeah,
sure.
I agree with you.
I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure. But I don't necessarily think that this is some like big backlash or some setting, a course correction for a left-wing liberal media. I was in the media for a long time. It's not that left-leaning.
No. I'd say the perception
The
yeah, I'm
perception.
saying
Yes,
that
I get it.
that when people were corrected with the truth, the perception was, oh, this is
you're talking
leftist
down. Yeah.
media talking
right.
down to me. That not necessarily that was actually what was current. No.
But these are the people who want their beliefs reconfirmed and reconfirmed and reconfirmed. And this is why they sit in front of the television all day and they're never changed from Fox News, because they're feeding them what they would like to hear,
Yes.
and they don't believe the truth. And so when you tell them the truth, they go, who's this guy talking down to me? What do you big
Exactly.
liberals? And you're like, wait, what? I just gave you a fact, and you're
Exactly.
calling the fact liberal bias.
Well, Dan, Don, my take is different because I believe we've always witnessed this. It's always been affirmative action for conservative white men. And we've always had to coddle and infantilize their grievances and their discomfort. And I remember during the Barack Obama era, I mean, they literally had Obama as a dead ape shot by cops on the New York Post cover.
Yeah.
Obama had to literally have a beer with Henry Louis Gates Jr., who was a black man arrested for entering his own home with the white cop. All right. He was never allowed to shoot from the hip. He was never allowed to keep it real. You and I have been in the corporate media. We've been on CNN, Don. You remember the affirmative action for the conservatives, where we had to sit there and tolerate their bullshit for 7 minutes straight as they lied, and they got to say whatever they did. Just look at Scott Jennings and how he dominates Abby Phillips' show. There's something that the conservatives have done very well and very successfully. It's called working the refs, if you follow sports. What they have said is, for years, grievance. Oh, you, the left, the elite, the coastal America, you hate real America, and you talk down to us, and wah. And corporate America, again and again and again, bends the knee to a bad faith grievance and bullshit argument. And then what they do is they infiltrate. They infiltrate the New York Times. They infiltrate CBS. They infiltrate CNN. And once they infiltrate, they dominate. And what do? Well, safe space for me, no safe space for thee. Free speech for me, no free speech for thee. Civility for me, cruelty for thee. And then they just mock us and troll us. That's how it's always been, and that's how it's always been the corporate media, folks. So what now I see is not a course correction. I see them saying, oh, wait, we're seeing a more brown, diverse, young, progressive community grow up. We're seeing Zoran Mamdani might be the next mayor of New York City. We're seeing more and more people be pro-Palestinian. Let's capture it, and let's crush them once and for all. So I've had a completely different take on this, and I've always called bullshit on this fake white grievance and working the refs policy that has moved the Overton window for the past 10 years more and more to the right. That's just my take.
And it's also such a petty personal grievance. Like, they're just mad that they aren't liked. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, with Don, what you're alluding to, like her shift to becoming a Democrat, which I don't really know if that's going to hold. The reason she's been upset lately isn't because she's worried about people who will get kicked off their health care. She's not worried about SNAP benefits that are expiring. Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to run for governor of Georgia, or she wanted to run for Senate. And when Donald Trump didn't give her the nod, because one, she's crazy, and two, she's a woman, she didn't realize, maybe I've been a part of this entrenched system of abuse against women and people of color that has been perpetrated by my party. And maybe I should rethink my worldview and how I've been a part of it. She just said, oh no, they're being mean to me. Like, that's what you see from a lot of the women in MAGA. It's like, oh, you're being mean to me. It's like, no, you have been a part of oppressing minorities across the country, and they just don't realize it. I also have to say, we need to wake up to like the real America thing. If I have to hear anyone else like shit on New York or Chicago or LA or DC, when people, and like, no offense to Oklahoma, but also some offense to the way Oklahoma's been governed. Like, some people there can't read because of their government. Like, I'm really tired of us having to act like the cities and the states that create all the wealth in America that has to be given out to these shitty red counties that were so bad. I know that's like the liberal elite thing, but honestly, like, some of these red states are just terrible, and it's because how they're governed. And I feel like we should just stop allowing ourselves to play into that. That's my little
Well, Jack, what if it was blue? What if it was the reverse? They'd be saying, they would want to secede and said, get rid of him, let him fend for themselves.
I don't think it's a liberal elite thing at all. I think it is exactly what Don was just talking about, which is people having an aversion to facts because those facts don't necessarily support a narrative that works for them. Like, the reality is that blue states and the wealth that they generate for the country subsidize pretty much everybody else, right? But that narrative does not necessarily work with respect to trying to prop up red states for whatever conservative values that they believe put them in the space that they do. And so the sort of counter to that is to vilify these blue states or to reject those facts, which is what Don was talking about. So like now it's kind of sort of like I respond to a factual argument with a moral sort of premise or something that I have that's difficult to argue, right? Like, so I respond to a factual argument kind of sort of with my feelings about whatever, so I don't have to actually address the veracity that's contained within the statement. And that's what we've seen the right do repeatedly, like going back and, you know, for years and years and years and years. I mean, that's literally how, not to get too far off topic, but that's literally how we got the anti-vaxxer movement to be as big as it is. People started responding to science with religion. And there's nothing against religion or spirituality, but the point is those two things cannot be argued in the same space. And so when it comes to like the argument about people talking about blue cities or talking down about blue cities, that is not liberal elitism. I'm totally with you on that. That is simply people sort of trying to avoid having to deal with what the facts are, which is what Don was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you guys to, I want to get your assessment. I don't want to put words in your mouth or influence you in any way. I want you to watch this a moment from this past weekend and tell me what you think. Here it is.
I want to ask you about something you said. You said Democrats, there are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You said that back in January. But recently, you've been using the term rigged elections in reference to the upcoming midterms. Democrats were appalled when President Trump used language like that. How do you justify using that now? Doesn't that undermine faith for voters? You need to show up.
No, I've been using that term in the context of Donald Trump's unprecedented effort to gerrymander congressional maps in a partisan fashion all across the country in order to rig the midterm elections and deny the ability of the American people to actually decide who should be in the majority as it relates to the House of Representatives.
You know, Democrats are also going through gerrymandering and redistricting.
No. Well, Democrats are going to push back aggressively to make sure that we have fair maps across the country, not partisan gerrymandering, which Republicans have initiated in state after state after state.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a response.
Oh, go ahead. Wow.
Did you notice that was CBS Face the Nation? And
That's it. Yeah.
Yep. And Brennan knows how her bread is buttered, and she sees where the winds are shifting, and she decided to come out and be more tough against Hakeem Jeffries than she ever is against Republicans. And she didn't give the context. She did both sides of bullshit. And I think, folks, we got to finish this both sides bullshit. We have to call it out for what it is, which is why I don't mince words. Let me just be blunt with you. Corporate media caters to racism and bad faith right-wing whining. It always has. It always has, and it seems like it always will. And there's no both sides here. You have Donald Trump, who incited a violent insurrection. You have Donald Trump now, who's openly saying he's going to run for a third term. You have Donald Trump said, I want 150 seats gerrymander. You have Donald Trump, who's copying and parroting Putin, talking about mail-in ballots. And if she was doing her job as an anchor and informing people, she would give the context. Instead, she's performing. She's performing like a clown for her new boss, Barry Weiss, to not be so hard on Donald Trump and to create a magical both sides framing that has never existed. Because regardless of whether you like Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton, all their sins, Don, are not in any way, shape, or form comparable to the laundry list, the endless CVS receipt of Donald Trump's ongoing sins and criminality, right? And
or
so what
CBS.
This happens, yeah, the CVS. What happens is this manufactured both sides shifts the Overton window to the right, makes the news skew more and more to a right-wing frame to placate bad faith actors who are always whining because Black people and brown people can finally speak their mind and they can't say the N-word. That is what's happening.
To say that Republicans or Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections with what he's doing with gerrymandering is not saying, it's not the same as saying that a free and fair, legitimate election that had been litigated in every court, even to the Supreme Court, that it was rigged. Those are two different things. One is a lie, and the other one is actually what is happening. Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections by ordering people to gerrymander districts in favor of Republicans.
And he would tell you that. Like they would
say
that
he's not
himself.
denying that. Yeah. He's not denying that. He's been very open about what he feels like state legislatures should be doing in advance of the midterm elections to give Republicans a greater cushion and more seats in the House. And he's not hidden this at all. So that's an excellent point. I don't want to be in a space of like nihilistic thinking, but in a moment where we have seen facts matter less and less and less when you're talking about news and media, I am not asking for a solve, but I do ruminate on, with media literacy being not as high as it should be for not as many Americans as they should be, I think the public needs to understand how dangerous this is. Because right now, if you are someone who has enough intellectual curiosity and you hear something or you read something on social media, you know enough to go to look at a few credible sources, and credible I'm using in air quotes, to ascertain the wheat from the chaff, to ascertain what's actually real and what people are sort of like fabricating or making up or spinning way out of control. But with the consolidation of these platforms being what it is, you will not be able to do that nearly as easily, because all of those platforms are going to spin it in the same way and say the same things, which means that if you're not necessarily tapped in to independent journalism, if you're not tapped in to different platforms like this, there are going to be competing narratives, and these legacy platforms, or many of them that have been consolidated, that you have learned to trust over generations. I sat at my father's table every night for the first 15 years of my life and watched, the nightly news. Like, if you're not able to like decouple your information gathering from these legacy platforms, they're going to be these competing narratives that this conglomerate of news over here is telling you something that may not be particularly accurate. And that's a super dangerous place, because at worst, people sort of will all believe it, and at best, it serves to create a bunch of confusion and tension and division.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jack, did you want to say something? Was that it?
Well, I think I just say that confusion is so important. It keeps people watching. And at the same time, this is an administration that fundamentally came in with the goal. Russ Vought said it. They wanted to traumatize federal workers, but it doesn't just make, people working in the government upset or confused or angry or disconnected from it. That's how they wanted all of us to feel. That public goods are not to be owned by us, or to be, sold off to Peter Thiel or Larry Ellison or Elon Musk to do whatever they want. That, someone can give a $130 million donation to the military, which is illegal, to say that Donald Trump is like covering up the failure of his own government shutdown. But like, really, all of this, like, they want us to feel disconnected from government. They want us to feel disconnected from our own power. They want us to think that it's both sides. They want us to think that everything's too broken to engage, that you shouldn't actually go out and participate in the work of democracy. And I think that as we see more corporate, the larger corporate ownership of media, it doesn't matter what the bottom line is of the Washington Post for Jeff Bezos. He doesn't care if they're making money. Their goal is not to make money and be successful journalists. It is to make the other projects of the corporations owned by Jeff Bezos work better, and that's ultimately going to benefit Republicans. So I think that we do need to take stock of how all of this is intended to separate us from our own power in governing, and realize what the corporate media wants to do, which is make us confused, make us isolated, and make us think that we can't actually contribute to our democracy, when the opposite is the case, and we have to more than ever.
Just a quick answer. I was wondering in all this, and one of the commenters said something that I was going to ask you guys. Is this going to make people tune out? This Larkin 6110 says, "I am canceling my cable." Is this going to make people tune out of mainstream media?
They've already started.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I'm sorry, Watts. They've already started.
I said even more.
And I think even more. You will begin to continue to see it, because there's not much. They don't do a good job of moderation, and what I mean by that is, like, they don't do a good job of like making it subtle. If you're watching and you're thinking and you're paying attention, like, after a while you're kind of like, wait, this is clearly spun in a particular direction. And when folks continue to see a lack of diversity of thought, diversity of speaker, diversity of ideology represented across these platforms, people are going to say, like, that's it, I'm done. And so I do think that, like, they will give, if you give them enough rope, we know what the rest of that saying is. And I think that, you know, they have shown repeatedly, a lot of platforms have shown repeatedly, they don't do a good job at, like, subtlety and moderation. And so I expect that it will get worse.
Thank you, gents. Appreciate it. See you guys soon. Charles, Wajahat, Jack, thanks so much. So went a little bit long because it was such a great conversation. Those guys are amazing. And I love having a group like that, real honest folks. And so, you know, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what we discussed on the show and some of the comments that you're saying right now. And I'm wondering if people are going to tune out, right? So, you know that the truth doesn't just disappear one day. Like, things just don't, it doesn't happen like that, right? Things erode. It's chipped at away little by little by little by little. And every time, you know, it happens every time we shrug at a lie and we go, oh, you know, I find myself guilty of it. Like, I was watching the debate the other night and I was like, oh, you know, and, Mamdani and Cuomo and Sliwa, but that Sliwa was a real guy. And it was like, but what are his policies, right? So every time we shrug at a lie or give Donald Trump or someone an excuse for just being like a real person or being funny, every time a network sells out for access, every time a journalist gets silenced, you know, whether it's Joy or Jim or me or whomever, right? We just move on like nothing happened. We do that. But truth still has a pulse. You just have to listen for it. It's in the questions the powerful don't want asked. That's what they're afraid of, the people asking the right questions. It's in the stories they tell you not to read. It's in the voices they refuse to stay quiet, even when the cameras turn away. Even when the cameras turn away. I'm not staying silent. So don't get numb, everyone. Don't get distracted. Don't let exhaustion turn into surrender. You need to, as I tell you every day, you be informed without being inundated, but tune out the noise. Turn off the spin, or tune out the spin. Tune out the mainstream media that's forgotten who it's supposed to serve. I don't go to a restaurant that doesn't serve what I want to eat, or that the food is not healthy or not good. The food is actually making me sick. No sustenance. Tune in to independent journalism. The people out here still fighting to keep you informed, all of us, not manipulated. The reporters doing this work because they believe truth is sacred and because they still believe that you matter. We're not chasing ratings. We don't have ratings. We're not chasing accountability. Our influence is measured in many ways, many, many, many ways. And I see it every single day as I walk down the street. I've never believed the TV ratings. When I was in cable news, I would be sitting next to a broadcast TV news star, the main anchor, and people would just walk by and they would stop and go, Don, oh my God, I can't believe Don Lemon, can I get a picture? And I'm sitting next to the star of the network from a broadcast, and they were like, they had no idea, didn't care. So I've never believed that. I've never believed, because people manipulate things. And people don't actually, I believe, pay attention to and respect minority voices in this country, the power of the Black and brown and underserved dollar. So this is where the real fight for democracy is happening, in these spaces, not in the boardrooms, not on the campaign trail, but in every independent newsroom or channel still daring to tell the truth. So if you care about this country, that's where you start. You support them, you support us, you share them, you share our stuff, you stand with us, because the only thing stronger than a lie repeated 1,000 times is a truth that refuses to die. So if you want to know anything about the show, the Don Lemon Show, go to donlemon.com. You can click on the watch button, and that gets you to our main channel here. Subscribe, like, subscribe, share our channel page with everyone, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Tune into something that you don't like, don't want, not serving you? Also, people ask, check out our merch. Everyone asks about the merch. I'm on the street. People are asking about the shirt. Where'd you get the hat? I want one of those. Now people are telling me I need the beanies or the hats for winter. So anyways, there you go. So you guys wanted merch. You got it. Thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate it. What else did I want to say? Do we have any pictures for anyone?
Yeah, we have some merch photos.
Okay, let's do it. These are the supporters. These are the ride or dies. Oh, wow. She's beautiful. Who's that?
This is Gail.
Gail has the new hat, the new black and white hat. Gail, thank you. Looking great. Thank you, Gail. Who else?
This is Multi.
Multi, thank you. For all of the folks who said, Don, can you get a shirt for women? This one is cut that way. And so it's for the ladies in the thing. Thank you so much. She's beautiful. Having a little drink. I can't blame you, lady.
Then we have 3 photos from Valerie from the DMV.
Hi, Valerie from the DMV. Beautiful. I love the Lemon Live t-shirt. It's one of my favorites. I wear that a lot. A black t-shirt is going to be my thing. Oh, the Don Lemon Show. And she has my book, by the way, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list. This is The Fire by Don Lemon. Go check it out. It's also in our merch store, I believe. I think it is. Yes. And the mug. Oh my gosh. Who's that cutie?
It's Bella.
Hi, Bella. Thank you. Don Lemon's biggest fan. I love it. Okay. Is that it? We got another?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. So if you're at a certain tier of our membership, we have a private stream, a private show for our members. That's coming up now. If you're a lemon head and a lemon legend, you get to be on. We're going to talk to you guys. We keep it real in those private streams. So thank you for supporting us. We appreciate it. Till I see you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time on the Don Lemon Show, the Don Lemon channel. I want you to be informed without being inundated, and turn the TV off. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.